I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Those up with the head. Intercepted. 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And then the cannons come. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. The Buccaneers advance their preseason record to 2-0 after a 42-yard Chase McLaughlin field goal as time expires puts them ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers. 17-14 your final score. We are going to break down everything you need to know and react to everything that we just watched from this second preseason game. The Buccaneers snag a W on the road. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew. Joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. We are kicking off this 500th episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Evan, my friend, how are you?
Well, 500. I just put my walker down and, had to tell all the grandkids all the stories of how podcasts used to be done. Back in my day when podcasts were still, a brand new thing of technology. But I was saying before the show, I guess we are Unk now, basically, right? So, appreciate everybody, whether you are just coming in now for the first time or whether you've been here since episode 1 or episode 100, whenever you joined us, happy to have you here for sure. And happy to be covering yet another Buccaneers preseason game, another Buccaneers season overall. So, yeah, we got a good bit to talk about tonight. I mean, obviously, I think the first quarter, maybe the first 2 quarters were pretty eventful. Then once you got to the second half, unlike last week, there was a lot to talk about. I feel like in the second half. This week, not as much, but there's still some stuff to break down for sure.
Yeah, we'll save more of the self-reflection for the end of the show, but we've certainly seen a lot of things on the podcast. The Super Bowl being a big highlight with the Tom Brady era in Tampa Bay. Let's talk about tonight's game. Again, a 17-14 victory. A lot of your starters, most of the starters on both sides of the football saw some action tonight. And really, I think we can start anywhere. Really, looking at the offensive side of the ball, it wasn't nearly as explosive or consistently good at moving the football as it was last week against the Tennessee Titans. It seemed like Pittsburgh posed a tough time for not only, Kyle Trask, we'll talk about his performance, but really the rushing game as well. I think the Buccaneers as a team finished with under 50 or 60 rushing yards on the evening. It was tough sledding for most of the night, it seemed like, for the offense. They did just enough to win, and we did see some highlights, which I'm excited to get into. But, overall, up and down, I thought, for the offensive starters.
Yeah, I thought, running the ball was basically non-existent. I mean, look, that is a better, and TJ Watt, guys like that didn't play, but, that still was a better Pittsburgh front, right, than Tennessee. And again, you're still looking at an offensive line that's trying to work with Charlie Heck there, right? That's trying to sort of, find their footing, I guess you could say. I mean, it wasn't great. There's a few times of pass protection as well that Bridgewater had to. Teddy Bridgewater, who started this game, Kyle Trask came in after that. Then he finished up with Connor Bazelak. But Bridgewater had to escape some pressure early on, but was able to make some good throws. And I thought once the offensive line settled down in pass pro, they were a little bit better. But yeah, run protection or just run blocking, I guess you could say. Wasn't really the greatest. Bucky Irving really didn't have much room to work, and he was in there for the first, I think, 2 or 3 series. So did find the end zone, but not in the way you would have thought he would have found the end zone. But Pittsburgh definitely did a much better job this week of clogging up holes. But at the same time, you can't overreact to this stuff. I mean, this is preseason games are essentially televised scrimmages pretty much, right? And teams are just trying to find out different things about their own players and stuff like that. And really, especially when your starters are out there, you're just trying to get out of there 100% healthy. I mean, and we'll see, the Buccaneers may have done that, may not have done that. We'll see. We'll talk about a potential injury scare here in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I thought the Steelers defense definitely played better, and the Bucs offense was a little slow at times for sure. But again, nothing to be overly concerned about.
Yeah, Bucky Irving, one of the starters you mentioned in the game tonight, 8 carries for 12 yards, averaging only 1.5 a tote. Not his best. It is the preseason, but you would have hoped to see a little bit more production in that aspect. But as things continue to get fine-tuned and we head towards the regular season, hoping that'll get cleaned up. Let's get into the quarterback performances tonight. We got our first look at Teddy Two Gloves in a Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform. He gets the start and gets the reps with a lot of those first-team guys. Goes 6 for 11, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 beautiful touchdowns, may I add. Nice little corner shot to Bucky Irving, and then an almost Mike Evans-like touchdown catch from the rookie Emeka Egbuka. Where do you want to start? I mean, we can talk about Teddy Two Gloves, we can talk about Bucky Irving and that big-time reception, and then, of course, Emeka Egbuka. This guy really coming and showing up as everything that he was advertised throughout the draft process.
Yeah, I think we can talk about the quarterbacks. So yeah, I mean, I thought Teddy looked pretty good. I mean, you got to remember this is his first game action in a long time now. So um, yeah, I thought he looked pretty decent, given the circumstances. And the ball to Bucky was a really nice one. The one to Emeka wasn't as good, but it was still good. He was good enough to get it there. Um, I thought he played okay. Definitely. I mean, look, there's got to be a lot of people that are calling for him to be quarterback too, because he had a lot of splash plays, I would say, right? Obviously, had the Bucs 2 passing touchdowns. Um, I think it's no coincidence that Kyle Trask looked, pretty decent last week with a similar cast, right? Like, yeah, the Bucs. We said, oh, the Bucs starters. Well, the only difference really was Bucky Irving and the offensive line that played tonight. Kyle Trask played with Jalen McMillan and Emeka Egbuka last week for at least a little bit. But yeah, I thought Bridgewater looked good, and I'm curious to see how they sort of rotate that stuff again next week against Buffalo. Does Bridgewater get the start again? Because I don't really expect Baker Mayfield to play, which I don't agree with. I'm somebody who does want the starters to at least play a little bit in preseason. I've never been a big fan of just not playing your guys at all. And the Buccaneers, for the most part, aren't doing that, right? Like most of their stars are playing, but guys like Mike Evans, Levante David, Baker Mayfield aren't going to play. So, I am curious to see, does Bridgewater start the game? Does Trask start the game? And then Bridgewater sort of come back in. So I'm curious to see how that unfolds. But I thought Teddy looked good. I mean, especially, like I said, given that he hasn't played football for a little bit and, wasn't at OTAs, wasn't at mini camp, got a late start in training camp. I thought he looked pretty decent.
Yeah, and really Teddy Bridgewater and the rest of the starting offense, their slow start to the game. I thought like that first drive and a half, really looked sluggish. But they really started to pick things up, and honestly, those next 2 drives after that was where you saw most of the offensive production tonight for the Buccaneers as a whole throughout this game. So getting into some more quarterback performances before we break down the rest of the offense. Kyle Trask, 3 for 10, 19 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Rough night for Kyle Trask. And as you mentioned, he wasn't playing with the same crop of players he was playing with last week. But if he wasn't, running away from a collapsing pocket, it didn't seem like he was very decisive with the football. Had to chuck it into the dirt a few times just because pressure was in his face. There wasn't much of anything cooking for Kyle Trask tonight after a really, really solid performance last week. Do you feel like there's more of a narrative or a discussion moving forward about Kyle Trask and his position as QB2, or are we going to kind of get what we always get with Kyle Trask, which honestly at this point seems like, as much as I hate to say it, seems like inconsistent preseason play just because he wasn't that strong tonight. But what kind of narrative do you think is surrounding Kyle Trask in his spot right now?
Yeah, I just think it's a tough situation because Bridgewater joined so late that I just don't know if they're just gonna hand him the QB2 job. Now again, I think next week could be big for Trask. Like I think he's got to play a little bit better. But I would still say it's probably Trask's job to lose if I had to guess. But again, like I said, I think Trask needs to play better next week, right? Because I think one more bad week and another, if Bridgewater plays solid, then I think maybe you could see, not necessarily saying that the Bucs are going to cut Kyle Trask, but I think you could see the Bucs maybe lean on Teddy Bridgewater a little bit more as that quarterback too, instead of Kyle Trask. So yeah, we'll definitely wait and see. I think it would have been interesting to see if Bridgewater had started the camp with the Bucs and he played in the first preseason game and they were like given like an even shot. I would have been curious to see that, but I still think at this point Kyle Trask is still probably a leader in the clubhouse, even though I know that might not be the most popular among the fan base right now.
Hey, look out for Connor Bazelak. You're a leading passer for the Bucs tonight. 14 for 18, 108 yards. No touchdowns, but no picks. He took care of the football. I thought he played well. And, yeah, he did get most of the playing time. Played pretty much that entire second half for Tampa Bay. But Bazelak, it's preseason, baby. He looked good.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the second half, right? Second half of a preseason game, and you got to remember the talent that he's also playing with, right? So you also have to remember his talent, right? I mean, this is an undrafted free agent. Like this isn't some guy who they used a premium draft pick on or spent a lot of money on. But also you have to remember who he's surrounded with. But you also have to remember who he's playing against, right? Like he's playing against other third and fourth stringers as well. So there's an opportunity there. And yeah, I thought he showed some things. He flashed a couple of times and obviously did a couple of good things. Got him there. Obviously made the play and to get him in field goal range to win the game. But yeah, I'm curious to see again how much he plays next week. I think it honestly might be very similar to this week, just flip flop between Bridgewater and Trask. I wouldn't be shocked to see Trask start the game and then Bridgewater come in second and then Bazelak finish it up. So we'll definitely wait and see. And then he could have a spot on the practice squad. I would be very surprised if Bazelak made the 53, but it definitely seems like if he's gonna stick around, it's gonna be on the practice squad.
Getting into the rushing game here, there's not a ton to talk about, as we mentioned briefly at the top of the show. Josh Williams was your leading rusher, 5 carries for 21 yards. And then Bucky Irving, 8 for 12. Sean Tucker got some action, 4 carries for 6 yards. And then even Kyle Trask got in as well, 1 carry for 4 yards. Owen Wright back in the game, 4 carries for 3 yards. And then Bazelak, 2 carries for -5 yards, bringing down the average a bit there. But it was tough sledding on the ground for the Buccaneers offensive unit this week. So that'll be something to monitor headed into this third preseason game. But I wanted to talk about this receiving group. And really, I wanted to talk about a guy who made his Buccaneer debut tonight, a guy that a lot of people have been anxious to see in action. That is Tez Johnson, who really, I think, had the definition of an up and down evening when you talk about how things can go in your NFL debut. He showed up a couple of times in the box score, had a couple of nice receptions throughout the evening. As hold on, let me find him in the box score here. I don't know why I can't find him. 4 receptions for 24 yards. And then he was on return duties as well for a majority of the first half. Had a really good punt return out of the gate to set the Buccaneers up across the 50-yard line. And then later on in the game, just a mental mistake. I don't know how else to put it. Signals for the fair catch, lets the ball bounce, and then somehow gets a hand on it because he changed his mind, decided to return it. When he went to pick it up, missed it entirely, and of course a Steelers special teamer beat him there. Sets up a short field position for the Steelers offense. So, up and down for Tez Johnson, but, we did see some good things, I thought. Overall, what'd you think of his debut?
You described it pretty good. Has the really nice punt return for his first punt return, ever, and sets him up well, and then tries to do a little too much, right? And that's the rookie aspect of things. That is definitely the rookie aspect of everything, and just when that ball bounces, you gotta let it go, right? You can't try and play hero. And I think he learned that the hard way. And trust me, he's gonna be hearing it from the coaching staff as well. So we don't need to harp on him too much, but I'm sure this entire week he is going to be hearing that exact thing. So yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, I thought he had an up and down day. I thought he flashed some of what he could be, but I also think he showed that there is a lot to learn. And this is a preseason debut, so I'm curious and excited to see him next week as well. Hopefully he doesn't make the same mistake twice, right? Hopefully just next time a situation like that happens, just let it bounce. Just you made the decision to let it go, let it go.
Moving on in the wide receiver room here, something to monitor with Jalen McMillan. He had one catch for 18 yards tonight, and it was an impressive catch, but it was also a catch that knocked him out of the game. It goes high up in the air on a ball that kind of hung up there from Teddy Bridgewater, and he just gets knocked over and lands in a pretty uncomfortable position. It was tough to watch on the replay, and he's knocked out of the game with a head and neck injury, being evaluated for a concussion. Now, he was able to get up and walk off the field under his own power. He was taken to the back with trainers, and he was carted to the back, but he was riding up in the front seat. He was giving the fans a thumbs up and, sending out the heart hands and all of that stuff. So that was promising to see. But on top of that and some other injuries that we'll talk about in a little bit, things are starting to pile up for the Buccaneers here, and this is not necessarily something you would like to see as we close in on the regular season.
No, no. I mean, definitely. There was a couple guys, and actually, a little update on Jalen McMillan. He was actually Rick Stroud had tweeted a video that he was in a neck brace leaving the stadium.
Hmm.
He was walking. It was just he was walking with a neck brace on. Again, could be precautionary. We'll definitely see. Have to wait and see on that. But I mean, his preseason's done. Anyway, like regardless. But yeah, I mean, you are right. They've have a couple guys that are a little bit banged up right now. And they've had receivers they've been signing receivers off the street for the past like 2 weeks because, Tej Johnson was hurt. And I think Jarrett was hurt and Cam Johnson was hurt. And, obviously you still have Godwin out and, they had a lot of dudes. Trey Palmer's still out. Like, they have a lot of guys that are banged up. So, if they were to lose McMillan, hopefully it's not anything long term. Like, hopefully he's okay. That's first and foremost, but especially when it's around that head neck area. But hopefully that if he does miss time, hopefully it's very little and he can get back out there pretty quickly. And because even though, yes, he is going to take a diminished role in this offense, I still think with the stats of Chris Godwin up in the air, he's going to play a factor in this offense at some point. So he's definitely going to be a big piece, I think.
Yeah, you already mentioned the absence of Chris Godwin in the early goings of the season. Josh Grizzard has sung his praises and talked to Rondé Barber last month and, really spoke highly of Jalen McMillan and his ability to carry over his consistency into training camp from the second half of last season. We remember he finished, what was it, those last 6 games of the season with 7 touchdowns or something like that. He had a monstrous second half of the year to his rookie campaign. And with Chris Godwin not being in the lineup, you have to imagine that first-year offensive coordinator Josh Grizzard is going to be counting on McMillan to step up. He's been vocal about that already. So going to be something to watch closely, and you got to hope that at this point he's going to be good to go for week 1. But hate to hear that he left the stadium in a neck brace, man. That's a tough sight. The optics on that are not great. But moving on to some more guys in this wide receiver room. Sterling Shepard, your leading receiver for the Bucs tonight. The veteran had a nice preseason game performance. 3 receptions for 47 yards, and one of his biggest plays of the night was a 4th down conversion on 4th and 6. It was a 27-yard catch and run. It put the Buccaneers in scoring position. Sterling Shepard, I think, going to have the same role on this team this year as he did last year. Just a veteran showing up when this team seems to need him, right?
Yeah, and I kind of wonder you're looking at it, this guy could be wide receiver 3 in a couple weeks in Atlanta.
Yikes.
I mean,
with all due respect
really?
to Sterling Shepard,
yeah,
I mean, he can still get it done, but certainly not the position that we thought when
no,
we
I mean,
went into this game.
not the position, not an ideal position, but like I think the Bucks can do a lot worse. So because again, like Chris Godwin, probably safe to say he's not gonna play week 1. Like, I mean, I'm not saying he's gonna be out long, but like week 1 probably feels like a little bit of a reach. I mean, he's still not practicing or anything, so that feels a little bit like a reach. And then we have Jalen McMillan, who we don't really know. So if both those guys are out, suddenly Sterling Shepard becomes your wide receiver 3. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I thought he looked good tonight. I thought he was a reliable. At times, I mean, he was besides the Ibuka touchdown and the Irving touchdown, he was like their only receiver getting open.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, like he was the one driving the ball down the field. So. Yeah, I thought he looked good, and again, he's a guy who may play a bigger role than expected, even a couple weeks ago that the Bucs expected. So we'll have to wait and see on that too.
Garrett Green, your second leading receiver, 3 receptions for 25 yards, a lot of those in the second half of the game, but he was one of the more consistent guys, and a guy who has been popping up in this wide receiver room throughout training camp, and he's just interesting to bring up because we've talked about him before. He is the former West Virginia quarterback turned wide receiver, and he's just really athletic, man. He's one of those guys that I would be interested to see that even if he makes the cut on the practice squad, to see if the Bucs have any room at all to use him this 2025 season. But he had a solid performance. And going back really quickly just to the Sterling Shepard 4th down conversion, I like to see the aggression on 4th down. I know that this is the preseason. It's kind of what that's for, 4th and 6. You feel the need to go for it because you want to try out all of these different game time situations. So it makes a little more extra sense to do stuff like that in the preseason. But I just like to see it in general. I thought it was a gutsy call, and it ultimately paid off. The Bucs ended up scoring after that Sterling Shepard catch and run. So I saw it mentioned on the Twitterverse, felt like a Liam Cohen kind of call there. By Josh Grizzard. And maybe that's just an offensive mentality the Bucs have kind of made a regular thing now. They've been a little bit more aggressive on the offensive side of the ball. They've been known to go for it every now and again on 4th down. They have a fairly good percentage in doing so, if I'm not mistaken, over the last couple of years. I like to see stuff like that, and especially when you see it pay off in a touchdown the way that it did.
Yeah, I mean, look, that going for on 4th down though, that's if we want to criticize him when he's too conservative, that's also that's ultimately a Todd Bowles call.
Right.
If he says you ain't going for it on 4th down, you ain't going for it on 4th down. I mean, that's just the offensive coordinator is below the head coach. So if he doesn't give you the okay, you're not going. So that's something that I think Bowles has gotten better with over the years. Like 2022, like felt pretty conservative. Like I remember, what was the one, like I think they were in Cleveland in 2022 and they punted when they were like, it was like 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, and it was like just past the 50, and they punted, and then they ended up losing that game in overtime. Yeah, like that, like he doesn't really do that anymore. And I think he's gotten much better at that. So and I think maybe it's more faith in his offensive coordinator. Obviously, Byron Leftwich was the offensive coordinator at that point. Maybe more faith in his offense overall. These offenses are much better than the 2022 one, but that's something he's got much better at, and it is nice to see. And like you said, preseason is the time to try that. I mean, it's the time to try all different things. You're not game planning for any of these games, but you're still trying to work on individual stuff that you may want to throw into an individual game. So maybe there is a point, week 11, and you're facing a 4th and 4. And you're like, okay, well, we've already ran a play similar to this before. Like, it's not your first ever time running it. So, yeah, it's something to, preseason to get you warmed up, but it's also to put you in those game situations. And I thought it's also for the head coaches, though, too, right? For Bowles to make that decision. Okay, on a 4th and 4, what am I doing here? Or, this and that. Am I punting here? So, yeah, I mean, it's nice to see. And look, if I was the head coach, I'd go for a lot more in preseason because, like, what do you have to lose? Like, honestly. Like, I mean, within reason, but like there was I think they had like a 4th and 3 or something, like the 50. I would have gone for it, and they punted. I was like, okay, whatever.
Within reason, even without reason, we got 70-yard field goal already. I think the rules have been broken, my friend. I'd love to reach a point. I'd love to reach a point in the NFL preseason where it's quite literally not a game at all, and you have guys just attempting 72-yard field goals and trying it on 4th and 17 from their own 35. I would like that. That would certainly make things a little bit more entertaining. Some quick takeaways here on the offensive side of the ball before we talk about the defense, who made some own plays in their made some plays in their own right. Excuse me. excited to get into that. But going to be monitoring Rachaad White. Have my fingers crossed that he's going to be ready to go week 1, especially in pass protection, because I thought that when we were looking at the starters tonight, Bucky Irving showed a few times that, still a little bit green in the pass protection area, something that he's still going to need to work on ultimately. Rachaad White, very undervalued in that regard. I think when most people talk about his production to this Bucs football team, we've talked about his pass blocking chops before. And then, Evan, on top of that, I want to get your overall impression on Josh Grizzard. I know it's tough to evaluate because it is preseason, and a lot of these playbooks are going to look extra vanilla this time of year. But, I mean, we got Bucky Irving catching, Jerry Rice-type passes in the corner of the end zone. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on Josh Grizzard and, again, quickly, Bucky Bucky and pass protection?
Yeah, I mean, you are right. I mean, it's hard to evaluate that sort of thing right now. Um, you know, Sean in the chat says running game was pretty vanilla tonight, unimpressive. Again, it's about execution in the preseason because again, you're not scheming up anything. They're not watching tape on the Steelers and seeing what the Steelers do well and what they don't do well. They're just going out there and playing. So there really isn't a game plan to attack a defense in the preseason. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting that they put out Bucky Irving out there, and not just like, okay, as a receiver, yeah, he caught a 3-yard out and got tackled for a gain of 5. Like, no, like they had him actually running around.
Bucky
And
Evans
it almost
corner
looked
of the
it
end
almost
zone.
looked yeah, I know, like it almost looked a lot like a design almost. Bridgewater seemed like he knew where to go with the ball pretty quickly. And it was a great throw and catch. But yeah, I mean, that'll be interesting to see if they throw that wrinkle in there every now and then throughout the season. I am interested to see that, and like you mentioned, Rachaad White, it's day to day right now. On his, I believe, the groin injury, something like that. Yeah, we'll see. I imagine, I think Rachaad White's probably going to be okay and good to go for week 1, which is good news because, like you said, like we talked about it already. Like there are things that Rachaad White can do that Bucky Irving just isn't quite at that level yet, and that's where Rachaad White's value comes into play. So, but it is nice to see that Bucky Irving can show you that like he can receive a little bit more. Like he is a little bit versatile. He doesn't just have to be, oh, he's just if you're gonna have him catch, it has to be like a screen or like no, like you can line him up as a wide receiver and maybe he can do something a little different there for you and just another gadget to throw in the offense. So that was nice to see.
On the defensive side of things, I thought it was another productive night as, honestly, the trend of takeaways continues. I believe the Buccaneers are up to 6 takeaways so far over these
Six,
first
first
two preseason games.
And I believe, all the interceptions, 3 more interceptions tonight.
Yeah, 3 interceptions tonight. You had Zion McCollum kick things off on the very first defensive drive of the game, undercuts a route from Mason Rudolph and makes a pretty impressive interception to set the Buccaneers up in point-scoring territory. And then after that, Kendall Vildor, who honestly I thought was one of the standouts this evening.
I thought he was really good.
Yeah, he had a really, really strong night, which you love to see. With a nice deflection, takes down the interception and has a crafty little return as well to set the Buccaneers up near midfield. And then later on in the game, Antonio Greer Jr. from the linebacker spot snags an interception, fumbles it. You got to hang on to it, but luckily the ball bounced out of bounds, and the Buccaneers offense was able to take over. It seemed like right out of the gate, Zion McCollum showing up with that big-time interception, setting up the Buccaneers scoring drive. That sets the tone, but the fact that the Bucs have had throughout training camp and now 2 preseason games, these depth guys getting hands on the football outside of the interceptions. We got Jacob Parrish showing up yet again tonight. You already mentioned Kendall Vildor having a strong game. He's a guy who needed a strong performance. This is really good to see, and this was a defensive unit that struggled at getting their hands on the football last season.
I don't think Vildor was in much danger of like getting cut because he's essentially the Taviar Thomas replacement. But I think he definitely made the team tonight. I mean, even the interception is one thing, but like the interception was an impressive one. Like it wasn't an easy pick. So kind of like deflect it up in the air and he just grabbed it. Saved a potential scoring opportunity, right? They're either gonna get a field goal or a touchdown out of that. They were in the red zone. So yeah, I thought Vilder played really well, tackled really well, which I thought was a big issue tonight. There's a couple like Shiloh Sanders. I mean that's the downside of Shiloh. I mean there was a bunch of times he's trying to tackle like up high, and you just at the college in Colorado that might work. Like when guys aren't as strong, they aren't as big, like that might work. But in the NFL, it just you can't. Guys are just too strong in their upper body. They're gonna shake you off too easily. And I think he learned that the hard way tonight. But yeah, I thought Vildor was pretty good, and I mean like you mentioned, Bowles literally before the offseason like really kicked off, like before they made a single move, before they did anything. I think it was at like the scouting combine. He said like, yeah, he wants takeaways. He wants more interceptions. He wants more fumble recoveries. They need more, and I agree. They definitely. They had 7 interceptions last year as a team.
Yeah.
7. I mean, that's
Oof.
too low of it. If you want to get to where you want to get to, and maybe take the next step towards like contention, that number has to be up. I mean, you're not going to see many Super Bowl teams or even teams that make an NFC Championship game with interception totals that low. It's just it's so hard to do if you're not taking the ball away. So hopefully this becomes a trend, right? Obviously preseason, preseason is preseason, right? But hopefully this is something that can sort of head in and feed into the regular season, carry over there, because it would do wonders for this defense if they could, keep up the takeaway numbers. Obviously, they're not going to get 3 every week, but yeah, I mean that'd be nice. But if you can just up those numbers, I think it would do a big time help for a lot of your defenders.
As we continue to talk about some of the starters here on the defensive side of the ball, let me get your thoughts on Jamel Dean. Popped up a couple of times tonight. One of them was getting beat over the top for a 42-yard reception from Roman Wilson. On that play in particular, it was pointed out that he may have been looking for safety help, but the fact that he was beat as badly as he was certainly shows that it was a little bit more than miscommunication that may have gone wrong there. We've chirped a little bit about Jamel Dean so far this preseason, and we're not going to bash the guy, but just want to know your thoughts on not only his performance tonight, but again, just kind of his position headed into the regular season. Because most fans on the Twitterverse, which I hate to reference the Twitterverse, but a lot of people aren't very happy with Jamel Dean.
Are you saying this now or like ever?
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
it seems like no matter what he does.
This is year 2 or 3 for the poor guy, and I like Jamel Dean. I do. I think that when he's had strong years here, he's been pretty good.
Yeah. So there's a question about Benjamin Morrison in the chat. Morrison's dealing with a hamstring injury right now. That's why he hasn't played. Bucks are hoping that he can get out there soon. Okay, so on the Dean thing, yeah, it's not great that he got burnt in a long ball. Tyke Smith also shares some blame because he's caught completely flat-footed.
Yeah.
And like that's an adjustment he's gonna have to make playing safety. Like he was just caught completely flat-footed, and Dean is, I don't know if he was expecting help, but he needed it, and
Yeah.
Tyke Smith just wasn't there to help at all. They both Roman Wilson got behind them very easily, both of them. And then the DPI call I thought was weak.
That was tic tac. Yeah, come on.
I didn't
soft.
really I didn't really like that. And then the touchdown one. Again, it wasn't a good series, right? I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It wasn't a good series. I just think there's Tampa fans, look at Jamel Dean, they see an issue, and I get it. And I'll admit, he did not have a good year last year. I've said that many times, but I've also said many times on this show, to me, there's a difference between a bad player and a player having a bad year, and I think Jamel Dean has had a bad year. Last year, I think, was like the worst year of his career. Hopefully he can bounce back, but I also think that Tampa fans, I think if you watch some other corners on some other teams, you'd realize that Jamel Dean maybe not so bad. And I think the Bucks kind of realized that in the offseason as well, because I seriously do think they considered moving on and saving some money. But when you look at some of the money that some of these corners got, they looked at Jamel Dean's number and thought, well, that may actually be reasonable. So we'll see. I mean, he needs to play better. I mean, that's for sure. But yeah, we will see, and he'll continue to be a punching bag every week. Somebody has to. It always seems like it's usually somebody in the secondary. It seems like it's always somebody that, like, I know for a couple years, like it was Sean Murphy Bunting. Like he was a guy that a lot of people picked on. Vernon Hargraves, obviously, and Hargraves I get, because like Hargraves, like, to me, like Hargraves was never on Dean's level. Like Dean is a much better NFL player than Vernon Hargraves ever was. So, um, I don't think Dean is great, but and like I think like when you defend him, people mistake that as like you think he is great. Like I don't. But I also think he's much better than I think a lot of Bucks fans give him credit for. And I honestly, like, I think it's kind of like the Rashad White thing. Like, I think it's like you don't know what you got till it's gone, kind of. And like, I don't, again, could they, should they upgrade from Jamal Dean? Maybe. But like, are they the worst position possible? No, I don't think so. So, but again, got to play better, and got to play better than they did last year. So hopefully he can. But yeah, definitely not. That entire series was one that he's gonna want to forget for sure.
You had mentioned Benjamin Morrison briefly, and they're going to be taking a look at his condition, hoping he can play next week in that final preseason game just to get him a little bit of live action before the start of the regular season. But I'm excited to see him get back in the lineup for the secondary because outside of Benjamin Morrison, unfortunately, this was a secondary that was, deep in a lot of aspects a couple of weeks ago, and now the injuries are starting to pile up. We found out that undrafted free agent J.J. Roberts, who truthfully I think had earned a spot on the 53. I think he was on his way to making the 53-man roster, suffered a non-contact knee injury, which ended his season. That's very disappointing. And then, of course, outside that, Christian Izien, who made a big-time play on the Chris Braswell sack tonight, he's been popping up throughout the preseason and training camp. Todd Bowles spoken highly of Christian Izien. He leaves tonight's game with an oblique injury, so his status is going to be murky for at least the next week or two. You hate to see the injuries here, man, because, again, like, you don't want to be digging as far deep down the depth chart as you are to start the season. I guess you'd rather have these issues to start the season, as we've got a $2, wait, wrong button, $2 super chat from Mr. Bucks Nation. Is Evan finally on the Teddy train, Rhett? James Hill asks.
Who's James Hill?
Mr. Bucks Nation, excuse me.
I
thought we were being professional.
Okay.
For
Yeah, I only know him by one name, so it's a name I can't repeat on here. But
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe you should be here on time and listen to what I have to say about Teddy, and then you'd know if I was on the Teddy train. I don't know, but I thought he played well tonight. How about that? All right, I'll throw Jim a bone. All right,
Jim.
Jim Hill. But look, yeah, the injuries aren't great, right? J.J. Roberts, who was, like you said, I think in line to make this roster, goes down for this year, not even like for like a couple weeks. Like, he is out.
Yeah, that's awful.
And then Christian Izien goes down tonight. We don't know the severity of Christian Izien's thing, but we will have to wait and see what his status is coming up for even next week versus Buffalo. But if he's out, I mean, it's always funny to me, like, because they did it with like the David Walker thing. Some people, like, their justification for wanting to trade for Micah Parsons was that David Walker got hurt. So like it was just like, it's just literally for the mindset of like, oh, our fourth string pass rusher got hurt,
Yeah,
so
dude, 12
that
sacks.
needs us to trigger.
That's 12. That's 12 sacks on the table there.
That's the thing that triggers. We need to trade for Micah Parsons. So I saw there was a lot of people that were like, oh, they got to sign like Justin Simmons, and I'm like.
Yeah.
They have their two starters at safety. Like, Simmons is gonna be looking for a starting job. Like, I think people need to remember that, like, yeah, JJ Roberts was having a good camp, but he was also probably gonna be like the fourth string safety. So like, I wouldn't expect that level of guy they're gonna sign. Now, if they're gonna sign a veteran, a guy like Marcus May, maybe it can make some sense. He played for Bowles for 2 years, I think, with the Jets, and was drafted actually when Bowles was with the Jets. So that could make some sense if they wanted to go that route, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. I think it may depend on the severity of Izian's thing, on whether or not they're going to add somebody or not there. But hey, it definitely helps the cases for a guy like Kayvon Merriweather, Rashad Wisdom, Shiloh Sanders. Their cases for making the team. It helps because it just you got to have bodies there.
Yeah, let's talk a little more about some of the guys on defense, particularly this linebacker group and defensive line. Talking about the rookies, I thought Elijah Roberts showed up a couple of times tonight, had some nice pressures, and he's a guy that you're going to expect to step up and really play a role in this defensive line after the loss of David Walker that you had mentioned. Roberts, more or less the replacement for Will Golston, so he'll come in on a rotational basis, but it's nice to have a fresher identity in there, and it's good to see him get active here in the preseason. Wanted to talk about this linebacker room. Well, before we talk about the linebacker room, let's keep it on the defensive line. Let's talk about Chris Braswell, a guy who honestly I thought needed to step up tonight. He was better this week than he was last week. Showed up big time on that sack with Christian Izian and had a couple of nice pressures throughout the evening. Wasn't, breathtaking, but was where you would hope he would be in a performance here in the preseason.
No, for sure. And look, it's something we talked about. I think I talked about last week of just getting some confidence up. Just getting some confidence, playing with a little bit more juice and stuff. And I thought, hopefully a sack tonight. Hopefully he gets that right. Hopefully it gives him that confidence, and hopefully it can get him going a little bit, because again, he's a guy that they're gonna rely upon a little bit. Like he's not gonna play like 70% of the snaps, but if Hassan Reddick or Diaby comes out, there may be times where Chris Braswell's the first guy off the bench, and maybe he has to come in on an important third down or something, and affect the quarterback that way. So, I thought it was good to see Braswell get to the quarterback tonight, and hopefully, I would expect him to play next week, so hopefully he can continue that.
This linebacker room, I feel a little bit better about the depth at linebacker now than I did just a couple of weeks ago, and I know it's preseason. You don't want to overrate a lot of these guys, but in their own right, respectfully, I think that both Nick Jackson and John Bullock are having very strong preseasons here. A couple of nice performances here the last 2 weeks from both of those guys. John Bullock had a monster hit on a sack to Skylar Thompson, and then Nick Jackson also had a sack tonight. He was the one who had the one-handed interception last week. He was one of the higher-graded preseason players across the entire NFL for his performance against the Titans. Both of those guys, I think, realistically have a chance at making the team now. And again, I think make fans start to feel a little bit better about the the depth that's playing behind Levante David and Servassier Dennis.
Yeah, I thought Deion Jones looked okay tonight. And then Dennis didn't play much, but and then I mean, look, even like guy like Antonio Kerr Jr. like came up with that late interception. Like that's a clutch play. That's the type of play that gets you noticed. Like, yeah, he fumbled at the end, but like that's the type of play that gets you noticed. Like that's the type of play that could help you, like significantly help you make a team. Bullock with the sack. Like that's the type of splash plays in these third and fourth quarters of these games that like you need to help you make the team. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think both of them made a case. And like Nick Jackson last week with the big interception as well. So yeah, I definitely thought that it was it was good. And you talk about the linebacker depth, and I think a lot of fans are worried. It's a lot of unproven guys, right?
Oh yeah.
There's even like Servassier Dennis, who's going to be their starter. Like, you've never seen a full season of Servassier Dennis starting, right, on the starting defense. So, and a lot of people were hopeful that it's because really the thing that they're doing with Dennis is the exact same thing that they did with KJ Britt last year. And it didn't work with KJ Britt last year. So they're hoping that it's just a different outcome this time around. And I say exact same thing, meaning guy who didn't get as much reps, got a bigger opportunity to start next to Levante David and failed, So and now he's not here. Anthony Walker's still hurt, so don't know when he's going to come back. I think once he does come back, you could feel even better about the depth there. But yeah, I mean, guys like Greer, Bullock, Jackson, those three, I think, are kind of leading the way there and helping fans sort of maybe at ease with the linebacker depth.
Yeah, some closing thoughts here as we cover. I think, overall the defense tonight was fine, but as the game went on, one of the glaring issues with some of the depth guys that we've talked about on the defensive side of the ball, tackling. Tackling in that second half was rough. There were a couple series where it felt like the Steelers were just pretty much running around doing whatever they wanted to because nobody could get their hands on the ball carrier. So that's something that'll have to be addressed. You're not going to expect it as much from your starters, but you love to see it, kind of affect the rest of the depth chart if you have to rely on those guys at any point in the regular season.
Yeah, Shiloh, big missed opportunity tonight for Shiloh. Like we talk about with Roberts, going down, with Izzy going down. He had a real chance, I think, to not necessarily like 100% lock make the team tonight, but he had a real chance to make like a real impression of like, okay, well, we got these safeties down and he just played this great game, and instead he played worse than he did last week.
You think it's over?
I see, and people have asked me this because I know he's it's a hot topic, but
some people
I always
don't
thought
think
he was kind of destined for the practice squad.
Yeah,
like it feels like a practice squad guy to me. Even like when they signed him, I didn't really expect him to make the 53. Felt like a guy who's probably gonna end up on the practice squad.
Fair enough. Special teams. We will close with this. We already talked about Tez Johnson and his night returning the football. I know that tonight was a mental mistake for Tez. I hope it's one that he can learn from. These are the things
that's like definition of a rookie mistake. Like literally, that's something you may get away with at Oregon, but you're not getting away with in the NFL.
You'd much rather it happen in the second preseason game of the season than the second playoff game of the season or anything like that. So hopefully get those jitters out of the way early.
Have it happen in Pittsburgh, not in Atlanta.
I would like Tez Johnson to win that return man job. I think that of the guys that we have seen who aren't hurt, who have been, trying to take some of these returner reps, I don't want Emeka Ibuka doing it. He's done it a little bit throughout training camp. I think Tez, has a real path to carving out a role as a returner if that's where they want to take him. I would like to see him end up on the team as a returner.
I would honestly, I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't. I think he's could be a special returner. Like I really do. And also like I don't know, like you say, like, a bunch of dudes, like who else is really doing it? Like they've had him out there a bunch, and like for punts, like they consistently sent him out there even after the muffed one. Like like the muff happened, and that's something he's gonna have to learn from. It can't happen again, but like they don't have anybody else on the roster that can maybe do what he can do.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
and also like that 37-yard punt, he also, I think, and again, I haven't watched any tape, don't have any different angles.
He could have gone
I think
outside.
If he bounces it outside, I think he's gone.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a touchdown.
Well, and let's not forget, there was another scoring opportunity, a game of highs and lows for Tez Johnson, but he had a touchdown right off of his hands. He was WAO, wide ass open over the middle of the field. And I don't remember if it was Trask or Bridgewater in the game at the time, but hit him right in the hands, and it bounced right off of his hands as the announcers were talking him up a little bit in the booth.
Yeah, but like I said, I have a pretty strong feeling. I think he's gonna make the team, and he's gonna be their primary punt returner. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'd be pretty surprised if he wasn't, honestly. So that's a good sign.
Over the last year and a half, maybe it's mostly just been kick returns instead of punt returns, but I feel like the most consistent quote-unquote returner that this team has designated has been Sean Tucker. He got a couple of returns tonight, so I don't love that either, because depending on Rachaad White's injury, I think we could be seeing some Sean Tucker early in the season. Hopefully, Josh Grizzard has plans to use him, just because I'm a little bit of a Sean Tucker fan, so that's another conversation for another day. But last but not least here, honorable mention to maybe the savior of our special teams unit. Riley Dixon had a really strong night as your Buccaneers punter. I think he punted 8 or 9 times total. Could have been more than that. But it was a very, very busy night for the new punter, and I don't want to speak too soon, but it looks like the Buccaneers may have potentially fixed this problem that they've had lingering the last season or two with punt unit.
Yeah, so he punted 8 times. Average was 50.4 yards. Long was 63 yards. So he's continuing a pretty strong preseason. So and hopefully, I mean, look, they paid him decent money. Like this is a guy who they went out and they got. So this wasn't like some just undrafted free agent. They're trying to find a diamond in the rough. Like they went out and they found a legit veteran option. So hopefully he is a guy who can solve all their issues, right? They've seemingly solved the kicker issue. Like, I posted on the page that the Bucs won before McLaughlin even kicked it. Like I knew he was making it. That's just the way that they've solved that. And in punting, I think can't doom you as much as a bad kicker, which because Bucs fans have seen. Like they've lost literally. You've lost multiple games this season because of bad kicking, right? Like bad punting, you can sometimes get away with it, but it's annoying for sure. And the Bucs seemingly over the past 2 seasons, really, like Camarda was good in his rookie season, and then after that was kind of like this roller coaster, and then the wheels completely fell off last year. So, hopefully, yeah, Riley Dixon can come in and just be like a consistently solid, good punter, and right now that's what he's doing. So it's positive to see.
And can't forget our guy Money Mac. Chase McLaughlin with the 42-yarder to ice the game. Ice in his veins, puts the Bucs over the top, 17-14. Very excited to see what he can do, and hopefully a couple more moments just like that throughout the 2025 regular season. But next weekend will be the last preseason action before the start of the NFL regular season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who right now sit with a preseason record of 2-0. But ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for today's episode of the Cannon Fire podcast. Thank you guys for 500 episodes. This is technically like 528 or something like that because we have a couple of episodes and some call-in shows that we did that we didn't label as a podcast episode, so they didn't count in like the chronological order of the show, but this is episode 500. I kind of envisioned something a little bit more grand, but I think that doing in episode 500 like this just kind of epitomizes the tone of the show because, we're just straight business, baby. We're out here to bring you the best Bucs content that we possibly can, and we're not going to try and sensationalize it or dress it up too much. We just want to talk ball with you, and I think 500 episodes of anything is a lot. And when we first set out to do this show all the way back in 2016 and 2017, Evan, to be quite frank with you, I don't think we ever envisioned 500 episodes, and I'm incredibly happy that we've reached this milestone, and I'm happy that we've done it together, my friend. It's been a really cool experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, 500 of anything is a lot, and like you said, I think I would definitely agree with you. Starting it back 2016, 2017, kind of. If you would have told me you're gonna do. Yeah, you just did one. Well, you're gonna do 499 more of them. So get ready. I would have been like, no way,
Yeah.
But here we are, and it's and at the time that might have sounded like the worst thing in the world, but it definitely hasn't been. It's been 500 of great, like fun basically. So happy for all you guys to be here along the ride. You're the reason why we do this, right? I mean, look, if people didn't watch, we'd probably still do it, but don't know if we'd be reaching 500. So you guys are the thing that drives this, and you're the thing that drives us. So we appreciate everybody that's ever in the live chat, that's ever watched a short video, that's ever watched a pre-recorded podcast, that's ever watched when we were never live. Like a couple years ago, we were never rarely live on YouTube. So we appreciate you all. And hopefully, maybe 500 more, maybe a big 1,000. I don't know. We might have to do that from like the Bucs pirate ship or something. I don't know what we would have to do for that.
Yeah, I'll have to. I gotta network my way into some stuff like that. We can pull some strings and I don't know, do something under the big flag outside $1 place. We'll make it happen. Even if we don't get permission, we'll just set up a little remote, do a quick 20-minute show just to say that
20-minute show in and out. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody we're there.
The show will end as they're running us off of the property. I think
that's honestly that's the best way to end 1,000. You know, and like that, we might end, and that might be the end of the show. But hey, we're gonna reach 1,000 in a big way.
Yeah, we're gonna go out with a bang.
Yeah, we're gonna go out big time. We're not gonna hold any punches.
Oh man. Thank you guys again. Thank you to everybody in the live chat tonight. Hanging out with us. It is a late night again as we continue to work our way through the preseason. Go Bucks 1911, Jeremy Steed, our good buddy Mikey Kelly, Wayne.
Happy early birthday, MK.
Yeah, there you go. Jared Cox checking in as well. Happy early birthday to our guy MK, man, getting tore up from the floor up. We appreciate your
Probably
support. We appreciate your support. Thank you to DH. Thank you to Mr. Bucks Nation for the super chat. Let's clap it up one more time for the super chat. Everybody else hanging out with us. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more great Tampa Bay Buccaneers content. And find the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show and, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. You can follow my co-host, Evan, on Instagram at Bucks_Daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at bucksnation.com. What have you got coming up for the people?
Yeah, going to be having burning questions following this preseason game, and then also going to be talking about who I thought stood out in this game. So a couple of guys we talked about on this show. You can check it out in written form over on bucksnation.com. And then also, like I said, we're ramping it up, because the regular season is going to be here before you know it. So got a lot of other talented writers there writing a lot of stuff about the Bucs. So head on over to bucksnation.com to check out all that cool stuff.
Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. And please check out the Rondé Barber Show. Brand new episode this week with Chris Myers. That is available on the WFLA YouTube channel and all the fine folks over there that put that together. So very excited about that headed into the season. Next week, the Buccaneers will round out the preseason with the Buffalo Bills. And that's interesting because it doesn't happen very often, but the Buccaneers will be playing the Bills in this upcoming regular season. So that's, again, I'm kind of curious what this week of practice and, of course, the game is going to look like, because what exactly do you want to do on offense? What exactly do you want to do on defense? Like, do you want to show the Bills much of anything at all here? Is it?
I wouldn't expect the Bucs starters to play much, if any.
Yeah, I don't expect them to play at all, but it may just be, 60 straight minutes of inside handoffs to Sean Tucker or whatever running back is in the game. Maybe Josh Williams going to line up and go out there again.
And same thing for the Bills. Like, I wouldn't expect many of their starters to play either. So if you thought tonight's second half was bad, yeah, you might be in for one next week. We'll still be here to cover it, but you might be in for one next week.
Thank you guys for 500 episodes of the Cannon Fire Podcast. We will talk to you soon with some more Tampa Bay Buccaneer news and updates. Keep it locked to the YouTube channel throughout the week. Evan's going to have some more position previews for the 2025 season coming out. Excited to bring those to you, and some more Buccaneer news. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish. We will see you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucks.